particular show we have 4 artists from New York City.
My name is Simon Gowan.
Michael Wilkinson.
Asaki Noda.
Alex Warenstein. We have two artists that are sculptors. Asaki Noda, very well known, very famous artist. He's done unbelievable pieces. He works in metal and stainless steel, and he's also a very fine art painter as well.
I'm studied from the painting, and then painting become a bigger, more movement. Then naturally shifted to the sculpture. Painting become more three-dimensional and more movement, then become a sculpture, and become a sculpture itself. And then later on, sculpture become a painting again. So affect each other all the time.
Asaki Noda is well known in Greece and in Italy, Japan, for doing large indoor as well as very, very large, majestic outdoor sculptural pieces in various areas.
This work is like movement and deal with the space. You can see the this piece. This is a small monument of the small scale of the monument, and the monuments put outside, and then there are a lot of reflection from the sky and the airs. If I get the idea from the metal, it's impossible to get this kind of shape. But I make by paper first. Paper you can manipulate anywhere, easy, right? Then I bring the paper model to the foundry, working with a worker, and it's a very difficult work to bend it over. But they follow the model. Then we can make this kind of shape.
Simon Gowan, and he does these very, very lush paintings, realistic abstracts of New York and other parts of the world. Very well known. He actually shows at the Peter Finley Gallery in New York.
I have a very, very broad subject matter, but I'm best known for my paintings of New York, because that's where I spend most of my life. I'm born in Manhattan, and there was a generation that preceded me of mostly Jewish and Italian first-generation artists that were very Eurocentric. They rejected abstraction. To put it simply, these artists adhered to the expressionist philosophy. Like one artist would be like Van Gogh. Their philosophy was that Van Gogh was more than a style, but a philosophy in which he emotionally and spiritually connected with the world around him. So from the very beginning, my work was along these lines. What changed maybe is how much paint I use, or the size, or I broadened my subject matter. But it's always been about the bridges, the subways, the trees, the streets, and above all, the people. The painting over here, for example, is a painting of a prostitute in a window in Amsterdam. Whether it be subways, or the East River, or the bridges, or Times Square, New York, it seems, what people like to acquire the most.
Michael Wilkinson, very, very beautiful acrylic sculptures of very romantic figures that when you rotate the piece, you'll see different elements in each of these large, majestic pieces. They're beautifully done.
The same kind of material that modern eyeglasses are made out of. It was originally developed about 100 years ago. So in terms of art history, it's a relatively modern material. I start out working originally in clay, and that's what I sculpt the figures in, usually heads or busts of people or full figures in the nude. After I've cast them, I make impressions of them with other materials, rubber molds and so forth, and replicate them in plaster, and then I assemble those images into the sculptures that I'm making. This piece is Elysium 1, and it is about a couple that has retreated from hostile worlds. The outside is very jagged and ragged, and they are within the sculpture aware of only each other, ignoring or oblivious to the outer world. It doesn't really matter as long as they have this inner world that they've created. As you turn the work, you always see both figures together. You never see one by him or herself. And as you come around to one angle, there's a small concave viewing surface that you can look into and see these smaller images of them that the concave surface produces. And that emphasizes the idea of them being further into the work and further removed from the world. It's a very intimate piece, yes. There's a lot of intimacy in the work.
We have Alex Warenstein, who is a realist painter who does these wonderful landscapes of New York, piece of Grand Street, piece of Broadway, that type of thing. Wonderful work, beautiful pieces.
Well, I started off when I first came to New York City, I was very interested in the fact that the buildings had so much of its interest on the externals, on the outside. You know, the fire escapes and in England, you know, all the septic tanks are within the building, and here you go with a tower. So it was very appealing in the way the light struck one building and the shadow falls upon another building. That kind of effect was very interesting because it had an abstract quality that I enjoyed. Well, this one I did probably a couple of years ago, and as long as it's in my studio, I keep working on them, so it changes, and even if it's been shown once before, if I see something, which is always the case, that I want to modify and so on, I keep working on them. You know, I'm particularly interested in perspective and teach perspective at the National Academy and the Art Students League. And so, you know, I've tried doing various things with the perspective. And in this particular one, you know, you can see the facade going off in this direction. There's another angle going in there, and then the building goes back that way in this direction. So you know, each painting is one of its elements of interest for me is the perspective.
All I could say is that we're very, very excited about this show, and I think that we're bringing to Bethlehem a real strong taste of New York.